Produce making its way into the U.S. through Nogales.
It's just incredible the amount of business that there is in this small little town. It's 22,000 people here, but we're responsible, those 22,000 people are responsible for $30 billion worth of trade.
Billions of dollars through the Arizona ports of entry.
Everything has completely changed. The evolution of Mexico has advanced beyond what anyone ever would have expected.
Managing business on both sides of the border. This is Arizona Week. Hello, and thanks for joining us. This is the Mariposa port of entry in Nogales. Every day, hundreds of commercial trucks bring produce through this port of entry. It's a billion-dollar industry, and it's a way of life in this border town.
This is an average day at the Mariposa port of entry, Arizona's largest and busiest. Customs officers will unpack and inspect the cargo of anywhere between 50 and 100 trucks a day, looking for everything from contraband to invasive species on produce. In 2014, Customs and Border Protection renovated this port of entry, a $250 million expansion.
It's been a lot smoother. We're able to handle the amount of trucks. Last week we had over 1,600 per day.
The improvement created 4 new commercial lanes of traffic and 8 lanes for private vehicles. The port once processed 1,300 trucks a day. Today, it sees about 1,700 trucks a day. At its max, customs officers will be able to process 4,000 commercial vehicles a day. The expansion has proven effective, doubling trade in 2 years. Perfect timing because Mexican produce crossings have topped 4 billion pounds in the last 2 growing seasons.
Some of the largest produce commodities by volume we see are going to be the watermelons, the squashes, tomatoes, cucumbers.
Once produce travels through the port of entry, it heads to warehouses in Nogales. One of them is JC Distributing.
We're walking into a very cold room here in your warehouse. Why is it so cold?
The grapes that come in that are in this room right now have to be anywhere between 33 and 34 degrees. These grapes came from the areas of Caborca, Sonora, and Hermosillo, Sonora. And some of these grapes are actually coming in from Guaymas also. So they need to be stored anywhere between 33 and 34 degrees.
So they're traveling for 3 or 4 hours?
They're traveling for 3 or 4 hours, depending on where they're coming from and depending how long the lines are at the port of entry. Right now, we're very thankful. The port of entry is cranking with all the volume that can come in, and we have product coming in from all over Sonora. We still have product coming in from Sinaloa, and we have some tomatoes that came in from La Paz. So those come in, they're picked and packed out of La Paz in Baja California Sur, and they come on across in a ferry, and then from the ferry they're trucked up to Nogales.
After Nogales, they go where?
All over the country and all over Canada. And some of our products, a lot of the grapes go into Europe and some into Asia.
Right now we see tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, grapes. What else do you tend to get a lot of here? I mean, what's coming through?
Bell peppers are big, cucumbers are big, there's all kinds of products. And the opportunities with our brand new port of entry are unlimited. We really believe that we're going to start receiving a lot of the items that historically had gone through other ports of entry. For example, the berries. Berries in Mexico are growing in a big way. Blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. Those products historically don't come through Nogales, but we're hoping that eventually they start coming through within the next couple of years. Pineapples, a lot of the exotic items is what we're expecting for our growth to be in.
Why would they suddenly start coming through things like berries and pineapple?
I think the opportunities of where they're grown down in the Jalisco area, in the Guadalajara area around there, the opportunities for them to cross the border quickly and more expediently, they're fantastic through here, especially with our brand new port of entry. And Mexico is also making a big investment on their highway system from Mexico City, which comes into what we would be calling now the I-11 project. So the infrastructure from Mexico, the highway infrastructure, the idea of the whole thing is to get from Mexico City to Calgary, through Nogales, through the state of Arizona, quicker than it is to cross through the other states of California, Oregon, and Washington. So I think that that's one of the reasons why we will start to see this type of growth through Nogales.
So tomatoes, those look good. Are they ready to go right now?
These are ready to go to market here. Hopefully we'll end up going anywhere from Chicago to New York, Boston, Philadelphia. These are actually from La Paz, Sinaloa, so they travel a long way to get to our to our families and our consumers. So I think it's admirable the job that our growers do, and the job, I think most people don't really get what it takes to get food to our tables. It's an incredible process, and it's a very, very noble industry.
I mean, what is your top produce here?
Well, during the year, tomatoes and Romas are our biggest products. We also have cucumbers that are very big, bell peppers that are very big. Those are the historical items that we're seeing. But for example, this time of year, we have products like the grapes that are coming in from Hermosillo. This is a very condensed time of year to bring in grapes. We bring in anywhere between 16 and 17 million boxes of grapes during an 8-week period in Nogales. So it's a very short window of time where we have these commodities, but it's a very important window of time that we have for the industry in general for the grape deal. Right after this season is done, then most of your grapes come in from California. But before this season, most of your grapes are imported out of Chile. So the Mexico portion of the grape industry is extremely important, and that's where we're at this time of year. Okay. But you also have the mango deal that is very big right now, all your melons and your watermelons, your honeydews, your casabas, your cantaloupes, all of those items are very big items right now. And Sonora in general has grown at an astronomical pace. We are extremely lucky to be living on a border with a state whose agricultural sector has grown in the way that it's grown. They're absolutely fantastic. They're modern facilities, they're technologically advanced. Sonora is growing not just in the Hermosillo area, but Obregón, in Navajoa, and in Caborca. The outlying cities of Sonora are also growing in the ag sector in a big way. Protected agriculture with shade house products, with shade house technology, and glass house technology, and plastic greenhouses it's incredible the growth that we've seen there. It's one of the largest, Sonora is one of the largest growing agricultural sectors of all the states in Mexico. So we're very fortunate to be right across the border from them. That type of growth only benefits the state of Arizona.
Researchers who track economic indicators for this area found that $31.5 billion are funneled through Arizona ports of entry.
International trade and border trade in particular is really important, and so important that our partners approached us over the past couple of years, and that was the Arizona-Mexico Commission, Arizona Department of Transportation, the Arizona Commerce Authority, and the Arizona Office of Tourism, who came to us and asked us to put together a website that would really bring together the data that would inform policymakers, decision makers around the state on what are the latest trends in border trade and what's going on with the border economy is really on both sides of the border. So the Arizona-Mexico Economic Indicators website is kind of a key resource at azmex.eller.arizona.edu. And the cool thing is it's, the website brings together the latest data, the latest monthly data, the latest annual data. And then once a year, we put together a comprehensive annual report that kind of ties everything together, puts a bow on it. And for those old traditionalists among us who still like to print things out so they can take notes, they have that resource as well to track and understand these border trade trends.
What did that data reveal?
Well, what you see is that trade remains a very important part both of the national and the state economies. A huge volume of merchandise crosses through Arizona's border ports of entry. Last year it was about $31.5 billion, both in imports and exports summed together. That's a big number, and it's also up significantly from 2010. Those flows across our border ports of entry are up about 40% from 2010. So these border trade trends and issues are important, something we want to keep track of, and something that we want to maximize as we go forward, because it does have an impact on job growth in Arizona and in Sonora and other parts of Mexico and the U.S. as well.
What do you attribute that 40% growth to?
Well, remember that 2010 was the bottom of the Great Recession. That was when we were all kind of, really the world was sort of dragging along the bottom. And we've seen growth rebound since then, and that has driven up trade. So imports and exports have risen with overall economic growth. And one thing to also keep in mind is that the border ports of entry in Arizona matter not just for Arizona's ability to export, but it really affects the nation's ability to export. We think that all 50 states in the nation export goods through Arizona's border ports of entry. Arizona, of course, exports the most, then California. It's interesting, the third biggest exporting state through our border ports of entry last year was Michigan. And that reflects the flow of auto parts across the border, sort of connected to the maquiladora industries that are also a big part of those trade trends.
The borders have always existed. So is it population growth that's feeding supply and demand? Why is this suddenly new?
Well, I don't think the importance of the border is new. It's something that occasionally gets swallowed up by larger events. Talk about issues with immigration, and certainly there are issues with immigration and violence along the border. But it's important to keep in mind that those aren't the only issues. There are big economic benefits for firms and workers and individuals on both sides of the border. That trade relationship is a two-way street, and it really benefits us both.
This report paints a very positive picture for the future of Arizona. Do you see Arizona continuing to grow or sort of leveling off at this point?
I think we can continue to grow, particularly over the longer run. But there are a lot of short-run issues that can impact overall trade. One thing to keep in mind is that the value of the U.S. dollar has increased significantly over the past 2 years. That's virtually against all currencies. But the dollar's at an all-time high versus the Mexican peso. It's also very high versus the Canadian dollar. And as the dollar rises in value, it tends to put downward pressure on our exports, upward pressure on our imports. So that's likely going to affect our overall export growth as we look forward over the next couple of years. But as long as Mexico continues to grow, I think we'll continue to see our overall exports continue to rise.
There are 6 land ports in Arizona. The Mariposa Port of Entry handles the largest volume of commercial goods. Richard Rubin is an American who manages business on both sides of the border. What is the difference between a maquiladora and a shelter company?
Well, a shelter company is a maquiladora, and a shelter company has the ability to start many different companies under its umbrella. So we're all treated the same rules as a maquiladora, and everything applies. There's really no difference other than when a company is in our shelter program, they are sheltered because they don't have to do books in Mexico. They have no financial reporting in Mexico. We do, as Javid, we have to do the financial reporting for every company. We keep them separate. That's what makes us a shelter maquila, that each company is individual. So one company doesn't affect another. The labor's kept separate, the customs is kept separate. So what we are is an administrative company. We handle customs, HR, we pay all their bills in Mexico, we do all the environmental. When a company comes under our program, they transfer the technology and bring the raw materials, and they bring the equipment to make their product. So their focus is production and quality. Our focus is administrative. Keep them safe, keep them legal, get them the people they need, and keep them 100% compliant with environmental and safety.
This is a multi-million-dollar industry right here in Nogales that you're kind of helping be a conduit for?
Nogales has 100 maquilas. Under our program, we have 24. Our industry right now is shipping $21 billion at cost across the Nogales Port of Entry, and $275 billion across all the ports of entry from Mexico to the U.S. It's a huge industry. It's the largest industry in Mexico right now.
You are working with companies and businesses from all over the United States.
All over the United States and all over the world. So we have German companies, Swiss companies, Canadian companies. We have 6 companies from Arizona between Phoenix and Tucson, making aerospace products to speaker components, to door locks, to transformers. The mix is unbelievable.
What's in it for them? Why Mexico? Why not China?
Well, why Mexico? It's convenient. Its location is convenient. The competitiveness of Mexico now is better than China, so they're saving money by being in Mexico. We speak the same language, even though we say Spanish and English. All your indirects are bilingual. So the level of education is much higher in our plants here in Mexico, and it's just more cost competitive now.
Mexico has a healthy labor force.
Mexico has a healthy labor force. It's being tested because we need more. As more companies go from China back to Mexico, it's putting an increased demand. Our business that would usually start 1 or 2 companies a year have started 6 companies in less than a year. So there is a demand. Mexico actually, because our industry is expanding so much, I mean, in our little town of Nogales, Sonora, right? We have grown to about 37,000 workers. We're going to need at least 2,000. We're going to be over need for 40,000 workers by 2018. So the demand for labor is extremely high, but it's high throughout Mexico. The interior of Mexico, where a lot of people used to come to the border looking for work, they're finding work in Mexico. So there's actually somewhat of a labor shortage right now. And we're all living through it. We've lived through it about 15 years ago. We will get through it again. More people will enter the workforce. But it's going to make all the companies become more competitive. They're going to have to offer more benefits. They're going to have to increase the wages to keep the retention as low as possible. But yeah, Mexico as a country is doing extremely well on labor.
What does this mean for immigration and the economy as it relates to Arizona, Mexico, the United States as a whole?
Well, fewer people are crossing the border looking for work because there's work in Mexico. The companies are coming to Mexico for their direct labor, obviously. But your indirect labor, where the companies used to have all their upper management was U.S. based, now we're seeing such a switch. Maybe you only have 1 or 2 people in a 500-man company that's U.S. based, and all your engineers and managers are Mexican nationals, and they're getting the wages of a U.S. employee. So that's a big change that we've seen in Mexico. Mexico is now producing tool makers. They're producing top-notch managers, HR people. So it's a big switch.
Is Mexico giving China a run for its money when it comes to labor?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, labor, the companies that we have that were in China and have moved to Mexico came back because they couldn't find labor in China. It was becoming increasingly more difficult. No one can believe it, with the billions of people over there. But Mexico has a young labor force, has a highly educated labor force, and this industry is over 40 years old. 40 years ago, it was just a plug and play, do simple assembly. Now in Mexico, you're hiring engineers that are coming out of college that are designers. You got tool makers. Everything has completely changed. The evolution of Mexico has advanced beyond what anyone ever would have expected.
What does this mean for Arizona?
For Arizona, it means that just between the produce and the maquilas, when U of A did their study, we represent 57% of the income of this county. So any maquila needs raw materials. They need transportation, they need hotels, they need services, they need warehousing, and that's the impact that's fantastic for Arizona.
What don't people know about this industry? I mean, this is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's happening right here in southern Arizona.
When people come into the plants, I take people into plants all the time, and they're just blown away at the level of production and the lean manufacturing and just how clean and the environment is, right? People still have, because we meet new companies, that's our business, right? And they think they're going to go to Mexico and see dirt floors. It just doesn't exist. Most companies are blown away of how nice these facilities are. And they're state-of-the-art. I mean, they are state-of-the-art. The most modern manufacturing techniques, they're all lean manufacturing, 5S. It's a world that nobody would believe until they come and see it.
Customs and Border Protection improved the Mariposa port of entry with this brand new state-of-the-art facility, a commitment to strengthening the binational economy.
The produce industry has been crossing Mexican fruits and vegetables and feeding North American families for over a century now, and we're very proud of what we do. It's an incredible industry. It's something that's extremely important for our country, and it's extremely important for our community and for our state. So in order to keep that vibrant industry going, there are many things that can help. Port infrastructure, which now we have a brand new port of entry at the Mariposa port of entry, which is absolutely fantastic. The connector roads from SR 189 connecting onto I-10 to distribute our products throughout the United States and Canada, that's also very, very important. And it's very important that we have the proper leadership from the state of Arizona, which now I think we do. We have a legislature, we have a governor who understands the importance of trade with Mexico, and it understands that there are opportunities, and try to tune out what the negative images may be of our community and of our state, and focus on what's important. And what's important is that we continue to be economically competitive, not only as a country, but as state-to-state competitiveness.
What does Nogales look like without cross-border trade? What does Arizona look like?
Nogales, without the $30 billion worth of cross-border trade that comes through this community, would probably be a ghost town. It would be an unfortunate situation, but I don't look at what Nogales would be without it. I look at what Nogales is now and what we can be in the future. I think that that's being really focused on what our mission is to grow our community and grow our industries. And it could be the produce industry, it could be the mining industry, the cattle industry, the maquiladora industry is extremely vibrant. It could be any one of those industries. And I think that once as Arizonans, we understand that we are responsible for our own futures, then that's where we start to get involved and say, hey, look, things aren't that bad on the border. Things are actually very vibrant, and they are moving, and there's a lot of things going on. And it is only in our best interest to keep a good relationship with our southern neighbor.
What is the future of the ports of entry in Arizona?
I think we have some issues with ports of entry that have to do on a federal level. There are also some state issues that we have to work with. But on a federal level, we have to be able to staff and man our ports of entry with the adequate staffing that we need. I say all the time, we need to work our ports of entries at the speed of business. So if there's an entrepreneur in Phoenix or Nogales or Tucson that needs to work with Mexico for whatever capacity it may be, we need to be able to have the staff and the manning at the ports of entry in order to make that cross-border trade efficient and fast. That's one thing that it's difficult for people to understand. To me, I'm a businessman, so I always look at the return on investment. And I don't see a better return on our investment for our federal governments than to invest in our ports of entry, whether it's a seaport, a land port, or an airport. It is extremely important that we keep our global trade partners very, very comfortable in doing business with the United States. And this is part of it. And every single person that we hire in Customs and Border Protection adds 33 new jobs in the United States and over $2 million into our GDP. So that's an incredible return on investment for every customs officer that we find. I say all the time that I'm very proud of our industry, that we feed North America, and we really have. And it's an industry that has been in Arizona for a long, long period of time. And I understand the importance of bringing and attracting new industries to our state. But there is also much to be said about retaining the industries that we already have in our state of Arizona. It's a very, very competitive industry. Texas is one of those states that has actively engaged in trying to bring the produce industry and more of the industry that crosses through Nogales to their ports of entry on the southern port of Texas. So I think that we need to be able to have that leadership from the state level and says, we recognize how important the produce industry is. We recognize how important our San Luis ports are, our Douglas ports are, and obviously our Nogales port are. And we recognize what that means to the state of Arizona. It could be the difference between being a successful economically or really going downhill quickly.
So is Texas a state that we need to be aware of?
Texas is a state we need to be aware of. New Mexico is a state. California is always a state that we need to be aware of. But it's not only them. Michigan and Ohio are two states that have really increased their trade with Mexico. They understand what it is to be able to have the workforce in Mexico to make their products and bring them across to the United States so that American consumers don't pay very much for their products, the least amount of possible. So the consumer at the end of the day is the one that's winning from our relationship with the $800 billion worth of trade that we do with Mexico as country to country. So that's something that we need to embrace and understand clearly. And that's one thing that I'd like for everyone to know is that it's an advantage and it's a win-win situation for both countries. And that's the kind of relationship we want. We have a great respect for our neighbors in Mexico and what they bring to us as consumers, but not only that, what they are consumers of American products is incredible. And we need to be able to say, it's not only what's coming from Mexico to the United States where we're buying their products, it's our products that are being sold in Mexico in a very big way, and we're growing in that sector quite a bit. We always talk about northbound trucks that cross from Mexico to the United States. It's incredible what we cross southbound between, just in the agricultural industry, between apples and peaches and grapes and all kinds of products that go into Mexico on a daily basis. Potatoes, grains, all kinds of things that come across. Sugar. It's just incredible the amount of business that there is in this small little town. There's 22,000 people here, but we're responsible, those 22,000 people are responsible for $30 billion worth of trade. So that's incredible.
This week's program was about cross-border trade. Next week, we'll take a look at how communities work together along the border. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us.